And welcome back to Fully Equipped. Jaywalk. I just wish that people could hear the shit that goes on before we hit record. The hilarity that ensues. Anyway, at some point, guys, we do need to release the footage of what transpired last week. That was arguably my favorite moment of all time since we started recording this podcast. 229 episodes to be exact. Anyway, how we doing, boys?
Well, technology is great when it works. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. I was the brunt of that joke, and without anybody knowing exactly what happened, I apologize to Coach and to my fellow pod hosts for that lapse in technological assistance.
You didn't need to apologize, man. It's one of the few times in my adult life I woke up from sleeping laughing, remembering it. I mean, that was like, I was giggling like a baby when I woke up thinking about that. So I am very thankful for that. Very rarely does a middle-aged man get that kind of joy reflecting on something.
We should
stay tuned to the social channels. We are going to release this clip at this point. We've talked too much about it. We got
to do it. Long story short,
the best part is I look like the only adult in the room trying to figure the whole thing out. So.
Yes, that's basically how it goes every week.
You definitely were the parent, that's for sure.
Yeah. Long story short on that, Coach was trying to offer up a take on Phoenix and the crowds. He was trying to clear up some inaccuracies that were out there, and Kris, for whatever reason, couldn't hear any of us. He just heard Coach initially, and like about every 30 seconds or so, Kris would say, "Voice of God." I mean, I heard Coach, but it was just deadpanning, and everybody thought he was just screwing with Coach. Coach eventually got pretty pissed and wondered if it was a bit. It was a great moment in pod history. We'll release it because it is hilarious. Anyway, well, what do we got? Mexico this week, out on tour. Not a lot going on. Last week was a big week at Riv. Why don't we kick things off with Hideki? And not for the reasons that you think. I guess I did post pictures of his putter. It's not in the realm of like the Tiger Scotty Cameron Newport 2 GSS, but it is a pretty special putter. But I don't want to talk about putters. I don't want to talk about Hideki's clubs. I want to talk about one piece of gear in particular, and that would be the shafts. RB, you did a story on Hideki's setup, but you focused in on his shaft setup. This is a weird one for me, because typically you see pros, and they might, if they're playing X Flex in the woods, they're usually playing X Flex through most of the bag, maybe until you get into the wedges and you see him step down into like an S400 shaft. But RB, as you penned in this article, that's not the case with Hideki. He has a pretty weird setup.
It is unique, and what's interesting about this as well is if we go back the week before, it's actually a very similar setup to Nick Taylor, and if we look back in history, it's another similar setup to J.B. Holmes, who is not considered a short hitter by any means. And that is that Hideki goes. He has some graphite design shafts in his driver fairway and fairwoods, 8x in his driver. It's like 9x in his 3-wood, 10x in his 5-wood, which is just like a monster. But then, of all things, he goes to S400 shafts in his irons. And again, same thing. Nick Taylor used S400s the week before at Waste Management. And a lot of people ask about this because the question I get all the time, one is about like my own speed training, but also just in general is like, why do certain players play certain shafts? And the human element, which we've talked so much about, is that feel plays such an important role. Now, I've done videos before in the past with the company that I used to work for. It's a great video, and I still send it to people when they ask this question, and that is, do shafts make a huge difference on performance if they're in the same category? And if you look at just the numbers and one player hitting shots, in most cases, you're not going to see a huge variation in spin from shafts from the same category. What you will notice is a golfer's perception of the feel of that golf shaft being hugely different. And look, I'm not picking on certain shafts, but there are shafts that are known to be very, very stiff because of their profile. One example would be like a C-taper from KBS, or even like a traditional standard Project X, which is like what Rory uses. Then you get into like an S400, which is designed to feel a little bit softer, or even in some cases an X100. Some people will find that it feels softer because of the profile of the shaft. And this is where delivery is actually the most important element, because what the player is doing is they are getting into their like load pattern or transition or whatever you want to call it. Kris will probably use some better terminology than I will, but the way that they load the shaft, that they feel that it loads and unloads to them in that vernacular, is important to how they deliver the club, because the shaft does not spin the golf ball. The dynamics of impact spin the golf ball, and the shaft will change a player's dynamics into the golf ball, which changes spin. So when someone says, oh, well, if I put this shaft in my irons, they're just going to spin more, it's like that could actually be the opposite, because you might be delivering it differently. And a perfect example of this, Martin Baumgartner, world long drive guy, massive human being. If you've ever stood next to him, I saw him at the PGA show. He's wearing his little shorts that go halfway between his knees and his waist. He is a monster of a human being, and he's walking around there, and he's like, he must have done some fitness thing before he was on this presentation or whatever it was. And you have to remember, he uses like some L-flex shaft in his long drive driver. So don't tell me out there, you folks, oh, I just picked up a ton of speed and I need to be like, I need to up to this. It's like, well, if it loads properly and like the way it should for you, then you could basically use whatever shaft you want. I'm thinking Autoflex and Adam Scott last year. He tried it. His dispersion went to crap. I've tried it before. I don't like that shaft because it's just the way I load the golf club. But Hideki is this great example of one size of flex doesn't fit all through your set. So make sure that as you're going through this process, don't just randomly pick shafts and say it's this flex, it should work, because your perception of feel is so important. And I can bet, Kris, you've probably seen some examples where you give a shot to a player and based on their tempo, they're like, this thing feels like junk.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, essentially, if you're looking at the shaft as a component on its own, it basically comes down to head is going to be predominantly responsible for the majority of launch conditions, start direction, speed, spin, and shaft we look at more or less as a timing mechanism that complements how it is that the player moves and the angles that they create in the load pattern and release pattern. So if you're looking at a shaft as handle stiffness, mid stiffness, tip stiffness, and you're trying to partner those components of the shaft up with what it is the player's trying to achieve, at the end of the day, the shaft allows the player to be conscious and aware of where the head is in time and space during the swing, find the center of the face at impact, and return the face to square during the swing. So nuts and bolts, shaft fitting is complementing bend profile to player profile. Now, flex, manufacturer, weight, if I'm prioritizing anything in shaft fitting, it's going to be weight more than flex. Since we've talked about before, there is no industry standard for flex.
I'll tell you one thing that's kind of interesting, and I've done a lot of shaft testing, and I 100% agree with Kris. Length and weight are the two key factors, and normally length, is regulated. I'm guessing, you're not adding an inch or something like that to a player. But what's really wild, and we still see it, and when I first saw it, I thought it was an anomaly, but I've seen it multiple times. The problem is I can't quantify what the cause is, but I know it exists, is I have tested two shafts, to RB's point, in the same category, same flex, same overall weight, but different bend profiles. They will have the same launch condition, and this is where my head hurts, but 200 to 300 RPMs difference in spin. So you've got the same head, same launch, so you would think theoretically the head's being delivered the same, and yet the spin is different. And the only thing that I can kind of, my hypothesis is that there is a delivery that's causing the launch to be the same, but there's a slight difference in how that club is approaching as it comes in. And in doing so, the CG location of the head is slightly different, causing difference in spin. I never would have believed that but I've seen it probably 20, 30 times to the point where I know it exists now. But my theory prior to this was, okay, if a shaft was, let's just say, higher launching, it would be higher spinning. If a shaft was lower launching, it would be lower spinning. It's not always the case. There is some dynamics, and a player can definitely create it where you get slight differences. But still, especially if you're over 100 miles an hour, 200 to 300 RPM can be quantifiable distance differences without a doubt, from an overall performance standpoint.
I think a part of that is like when we talk, exactly to your point, like the deflection of the shaft. And I can think of examples where I've given players a stiffer shaft, and because they can't feel it loading, they are putting more effort, or they're trying harder. I don't know any other way to use it. They're literally trying harder to load the shaft. It messes up their timing. They early release. They add loft. The next thing you know, they're spinning it more, and they're looking at the numbers in the simulator or on the launch monitor in their fitting, and they go, "This is a low launch, low spin shaft. What's happening?" I'm like, "Well, it's you. It's not the shaft. The shaft's not doing anything. The shaft's an inanimate object. It's how you're delivering it into the golf ball because of your reaction to what you are feeling." And so I think that is the one thing when we talk, going back to the main point of like Hideki, is like you see his driver, he gets out there, he's not quite Cameron Young where he like gets to the top and there's like, it feels like there's a pause and he's frozen, like your YouTube video is paused for a second. He's like, then he snaps through, but he has like this pause, which he has changed. Actually, if you look back at older videos, it was longer, but that load pattern is very different than someone who would like get back and fire through very quickly. So for him, that's just how he feels the shaft. It's how he delivers it properly. And at the end of the day, it's the same shaft that he uses all the way through his wedges. And when people ask, like, what's the difference between, like, tour product and, like regular person product, all I can say is that I know and there's no difference. It's not like he hard steps or soft steps. From what I understand, talking to the True Temper guys in the past, there's no difference there. But with Hideki stuff, there's tour, like the tour issue label? Well, guess what? There's the secret Hideki label. And every shaft is measured to the 10th of a gram. So those are the Hideki shafts in the true tour truck if they're going to build them a new set. Because he gets a little picky, and you know what? When you're as good as Hideki, you can be as damn picky as you want.
See, here you guys, and this is a really fascinating conversation. Because shafts to me, like even now, after having been in the industry for a while, shafts to me just scare the ever-living crap out of me. Because you think you have it figured out, and you're like, oh yeah, this is my flex and weight and profiles that I like, and everything is good. And then you see somebody like Hideki that sort of breaks the conventional mold of how you would expect the shaft profile to go throughout the bag. And I think more than anything, these types of conversations reinforce the importance of getting fit. Like, if you're going out and buying, let's just say that there's a really hot shaft out on tour, and you're fascinated by it, and you go spend $300 or $400 on this particular shaft and get it built up and test it, and it doesn't work. I mean, unless you have a lot of disposable income. I mean, that's a pretty good chunk of money to just spend on a whim, shot in the dark, and. Again, it really does highlight the importance of like everybody delivers the golf club differently. I continue to go back to when we went and tested all the Fujikura, the Ventus TR stuff in Scottsdale, and RB went through it. And if we were betting money on what shaft he would end up in, I would have like set the highest odds on the red based on like how RB delivers the golf club. No, it was the best one, and so it just. Again, shafts that we've talked about in the past, like start with the head, fine tune with the shaft. I think is a really great way to do it, because you can do a lot of great things with the right golf shaft inside a head that is optimized to your game. But again, don't just assume that what you have right now is the best. Like, get with a good fitter, have them like walk you through, like establish a baseline for where you're at, and then have them figure out if there's something else that's better for you. But don't try and do it alone. That's my sage piece of gear advice for today.
And the reason this comes up, and the reason I wanted to write this piece was because I have a friend who recently went for a lesson, and I kind of know the obviously my friend and the person I recommended, and great, like he's a good coach, like he's a knowledgeable swing instructor, but he messes me because I obviously like fit and build golf clubs. He's like, oh man, your buddy's great, he's got a ton of speed, but he really needs to like move into this golf shaft. And I said no, he doesn't. Like he recommended something that was stiffer and like heavy, and I'm like, first of all, that's fine, but let me explain why not. First of all, you're talking to someone who has has at some points talked about lower back problems. You probably didn't discuss that, like when you think about club fitting. So he needs something that might be a touch lighter than like something that is mega stiff and mega heavy. Secondly, like he's going to deliver the golf club almost the same. That's why he's talking to you to lower his launch and lower his spin. Like, let's not focus on like you need to do this right away because I'm going to do this, because I get questions all the time. I put myself out there when I let people ask questions. It's like, what you asking to lower launch and lower spin for me? And I'm like, none of them. Like you might find a slight variation or a difference, but like go change your driver loft on your adapter first. Go do this first, and all of those things together are going to be the factor that goes into creating better launch conditions. Just randomly saying I have a 10.5 degree driver and I launch it high and I need a low launch shaft. Well, guess what? You're still playing a 10.5 degree freaking driver. Like, you know, that's the whole thing, and that's why I wanted to highlight this, because I'm not getting upset at these people. I'm just trying to help them understand that, like, don't go waste your money, which is exactly the point you just made. I'm not going to tell you to go buy something just to go buy something unless you just want to go spend money on something. That's fine. Like, that's cool. Like, by all means, I don't care. But, you know, think about
that is so
all
important.
the factors.
Well, and that's a really good point. And to your point, so I was at the PGA show, and I was in the Foresight booth with my robot, and next to us was a hitting bay, and it was the indoor test center, and all these long drive guys kept coming up every day and hitting, and I kept talking to them about their shafts, and most of them were in, you know, industry parlance, A-flexes and weak R's, and you know, these guys are bringing 200, 210 ball speed, and it was it was amazing to see. And I know, working with Bryson, that his flex is an R flex, you know, for 190 miles an hour ball speed. The point being, and Kris, I'd love your take on this, because these guys have, you know, I'd throw the long drive guys out because accuracy is not as important as just pure distance. But a guy like Bryson is, you know, he's making his money with the weak R, and it kind of leads me back to that old adage that you should play the shaft that is the lightest and most flexible that you can handle. Would you agree with that, you know, kind of old adage? And obviously it, you know, but these guys have kind of upended the norms of, you know, as RB was saying, the faster you get, the more stiff you need. So I'd love to hear your take on that.
That's actually a question that gets asked a lot, and also is part of my training protocol for our new fitters that come through, is understanding shaft fitting, player objectives, and essentially cause and effect when you're pulling levers in a fitting environment. So, I mean, going back to Hideki and looking at the S400 in his iron, I mean, you look at that particular instrument and you go, okay, how often is a player like Hideki going 100% full bore with an iron swing? Now, that same iron also has to feel good and respond when he's hitting a knockdown shot, when he's trying to shape shots, when he's hitting anything less than a full shot. And if you're playing something that's so heavy and so stiff, it's extremely difficult to get a consistent feel and reaction out of that particular golf club. So, Gene, to your point, like, when you're conducting a player interview, I'm asking, are we focusing on distance? Are we focusing on control and dispersion? As I can accomplish both of those things with making adjustments in shaft. So I can get you more ball speed and the ball goes further, or I can give you more control and add more spin. Which one do you want to see? And so it just kind of depends on objectively what you're looking for. But general rule of thumb, with irons, the softest shaft that you can get away with that still gives you a good amount of control is the right shaft.
Before we switch to the next topic, I do want to ask you guys a question, because this is one that I feel like we all have received a handful of times, which is golfers see pros using shafts, and some are kind of what I call stepping down in weight. So they'll start with it. In Hideki's perfect example, he's 8x in the driver, 9x in the 3-wood, 10x in the 5-wood, and then you see some players. I think of like a Sergio Garcia, who is a constant weight. So he might be playing a 7x in the driver, but then he uses that same 7x throughout all of his woods. And the question is always, well, which is the best option for me? What are the differences there? What's your explanation for why some guys prefer to step up in weight, down in weight, I guess however you want to explain it, versus having a constant weight throughout the woods?
I would say that it just comes down to player total weight. That's that factor. That total weight factor is the thing that I think is the biggest one, because some players want that descending or ascending, I guess, weight into their shorter clubs, so they want to be a little bit heavier as they go through. And some players don't really notice a big difference. They're more focused, or they're more sensitive to swing weight. And that to me is there's that balance of the two. And it doesn't mean that a good player or a bad player, a beginner player, is sensitive to one or the other. Everyone is very, very different in how they perceive weight and mass. So I think Hideki's probably someone who fits into the total weight category, which is why he uses those S400s and uses the shaft that gets quite progressively heavier and starts with a heavier driver as well, right? I mean, he's no short knocker, and he's using an 8X, which is probably one of the heaviest shafts that you can get on tour. At least one of the heaviest shafts guys are using someone's using on tour. So I think that's just where the breakdown comes from. But for anyone looking for speed, in most cases, you'd want to stay as light as possible through the bag. But again, it comes down to that field preference, which I think is really highly important.
All right, we could continue to keep going on in the weeds, but I wanna keep things moving and spend a little bit of time talking about another Kirkland product. Big surprise there. Yeah, so just here in the last day or so, some spy photos have leaked of a new Kirkland signature KS2 mallet. And this is a winged mallet. Although I gotta say, Costco and TaylorMade are already in a legal battle over the Kirkland irons, and how closely, at least allegedly, that's what TaylorMade's claiming, how closely they mirror the popular P790s. If you look at this KS2 putter, what's the first putter that comes to mind when you see this overall look?
Is it the Fang putter from Odyssey? What's that called? The 7 or something?
Yeah. I mean, it is. It's like
the number 7.
Number 7, that's a popular shape, and we've seen everybody. To me, it has a little bit of the Spider GT Max vibe going on. Like the overall profile,
the other day.
Like
a little more squared off mallet.
A little squared off, little angular there at the end of the fangs. Kind of a thicky putter, not super, not a super thin version. It doesn't have the adjustable weights going up and down each one of the fangs, but when I saw it, I'm like, oh, cool. Maybe there's another lawsuit coming.
If we get into the details, I think it almost looks like I'm just trying to figure it out. It's like there's a ping putter. I can't think of the name of it though, which is the problem. It's like I think it's the Tyne, which has that similar.
Yeah. Cameron Champ uses one that's called the Prime Tyne.
Yeah. So like, I mean, you could. It's kind of one of those weird. It's like, you get the putter nerds who talk about. I'm not picking on them, but like, they're the putter nerds, who are like, this is a ping answer, but this is like the difference in this type of answer putter or whatever. And there are slight details in bumper width and angles and all of those things. So you could pick and choose on all kinds of stuff when it comes to this, but. Yeah, I mean, like, what is it? Winged mallet 7, the prime tine. Like, there's just a lot of ways you call it, but it's a winged mallet. It's a popular design. The funny thing to me is, and I had someone on Instagram. It was probably close to a year ago. He actually just reached out again, Lex, a couple days ago. He sent me a box or a picture of a bunch of putter covers on a table, and obviously, like, it was from a manufacturing place overseas somewhere. That's as much detail as I'm going to give. And there was a mallet cover that said KS2 on it. And he goes, I wonder what this means. And that was like 12 months ago. So, the fact that...
You're saying these photos aren't new?
I'm saying that the putter could be new. The putter... I only got a picture of the putter cover. And it was one picture. So I think it is interesting to look at it and be like, you see so much in advance of like what's going on. But like the consumer's getting something it's like, it's like one of those weird things now. Like I always think about it because of like working. I used to work at a Costco a long time ago, and like thinking of logistics and all that stuff. It's like all the stuff that Costco gets for Christmas time that comes in like October, that had to get ordered 8 months ago. Or even like a year ago based on forecasts from before. And now they're like, it was manufactured. Then it was put on a slow boat. Then it got over here. Then it went to their distribution center. And then it ended up in their warehouses. So like you start doing the math on this stuff where you go to a dollar store and right now you got like, Valentine's Day's over now. But like St. Patrick's Day is coming up. All the St. Patrick's Day junk that was made overseas was made a year ago. Then it got in a slow boat and it finally came its way here. And so when like end of February hits, they could throw all the green crap on the wall. So like... That to me is where like it's so fascinating that like this was probably been in production or been in like an idea for well over a year. It's just now someone got a hold of it, someone took a picture of it, and which means to me with all the branding and everything that was in those pictures, we're probably not far off from one of these things hitting the shelves again.
Oh my gosh! Well, I think it just further confirms that Costco is not just. Like they're not going to be in the golf ball business and that's it. I mean, they're full on every product. Now they're starting to add different options to the lineup. You had a blade putter. Now you're going to eventually have a mallet putter. So they're not going anywhere. And I don't know. I just want to see if there's more lawsuits. I just love any time there's chaos. That's my sweet spot. So at least for now, we know.
We embrace chaos. You're just not going to find one of those putters at a True Spec.
I don't think so.
Kris is just shaking his head. He won't even answer the question. He won't even answer. He chooses not to respond.
There's no chance.
Neither confirm nor deny. Yeah,
I will confirm that you will not have a Costco putter at a True Spec. I will not be charging someone a fitting fee that is equal to the price of the putter.
Yeah. We can expect this one's probably going to cost like $99.
No, the putter was $149, which I think was. I mean, it's probably going to be in the $150 range, I would imagine. And do what they did last time. Because it's like Super Stroke grip they had on. You could buy the weight kit separately. I think what were they? I think maybe it was $129 for the putter last time. So I mean that's reasonable considering like most. I mean, heck, an AI1 putter. AI1 milled putter now is $499, which is kind of crazy. Like when you think about like
they're pretty expensive.
Odyssey's price point in Canada, that's $699. That like think about that's a lot of money, or it's like
a driver.
It's like $579. Yeah, so they come in with a putter at $150. Someone walking into a Costco is like that's a damn steal, right? I mean, the average Costco consumer household income is probably around $180,000 total. Like, they're talking to people who is the target market of these things. So, once it comes out, I'll do what I did last time. I'll just find one and ship it to Gene's house, and then he'll ship it to me, and we'll deal with that logistical nightmare again.
We don't talk about that stuff. That's their circuitous route to get product to RB, but
Yeah, well, you gotta
the things we do to
you gotta stop
help
by
him
my
scratch
place
his
and
gear
hand
itch.
pick it up. I'm not shipping anymore. I'm not going to UPS. So you gotta make a trip out here to do it.
I think you could twist his arm and he'll do that. Anyway, what else we got? Oh man, yeah, I was saving this one towards the end. We do have an interview this week. RB had an opportunity to chat all things Vokey SM10 with Aaron Dill. He's not on Vok's level just yet, but AD's moving that direction. He's like the guy now, along with Vok, when it comes to Vokey wedges. Anyway, so we'll have that interview at the end of today's episode. But before we do that, Rory McIlroy is now giving Scottie Scheffler his thoughts on the putter. I do find this rich.
Speaking of mallet putters, there you go. There's your transition.
There we go, yeah. I do find this rich, guys. I got to say. And you know what? Somebody asked Rory about it. He's going to give an answer. But, man, if you look at this, Rory and Scottie are basically the same guy. Like, absolute nails from tee to green. Like, Scottie Scheffler's having, like, not just a career ball striking year, but, one of the best of all time, right? The numbers are absurd. And the one club, we've talked about it before, and Scottie doesn't want to talk about it anymore. So now it's everybody else talking about Scottie's putter struggles, but it's the putter. Somebody asked him about, what would Rory do? And Rory said, yeah, we've all been through it. I've certainly been through my fair share of putting woes through the years, and I feel like I've broken through and become a pretty consistent putter. Yeah, I would say at times. And he said, for me, going to a mallet was a big change. I really persisted with the blade putter for a long time, but I feel like your stroke has to be so perfect to start the ball on line, where the mallet gives you a bit more margin for error. That to me gave me the confidence that I could go forward with that, knowing that even if I don't put a perfect stroke on it, the ball's not going to go too far offline. And it's pretty much in line with what we said about mallet putters in the past, which is mallet putters give you a bit more wiggle room if you don't hit it out of the middle. I think back to the photos that I was able to take last week at Riv of Tiger's putter and that perfect wear mark. You could line it up with the sight dot on top, and it's almost directly underneath it. It's insane. But, not everybody is a consistent, he's going to have consistent contact. So that's where mallets come into play is, the overall, the heavier head, the overall stability there. If you're hitting it off the heel or toe, you're going to have a heavier head that's going to help reduce twisting, which will hopefully lead to more consistent putts and get you closer to the hole. And maybe, every so often you actually make a putt that you would have missed. So yeah, mallets are good, but again, Rory is not, he's not Brad Faxon, and he's not Denny McCarthy or some of these, not Denny McCarthy because he's been a pretty consistent putter over the last few years. I don't know. Again, Rory's asked a question. He's going to give you an answer, but I don't really know if he's the best guy to be providing advice. Scottie's tried mallet putters. He's currently in an Olsen putter that is a bit more on the wider side. It would kind of be like a plus version, bit wider with the flange. Last I saw, and I saw him working with Logan Olsen on putters at Riv last week. Few interesting models, nothing that I can report on just quite yet, but some fascinating stuff going on with the weighting. So I don't know, man. Is Scottie gonna figure this out? I would really like for him to go on like a Tiger-like tear. He is a mediocre putter away from being an absolute world beater.
I see this as a little bit of gamesmanship. It's like putting another thought into his head, and based on the reporting on this pod, he's got a lot of thoughts in that head to begin with, and now you're throwing in a mallet on top of it all, and it's paralysis through analysis. The interesting thing about mallets, in having tested them, and I think you wrote a story about this when I think it was Zalatoris missed a putt at 18 on the Farmers because he hit so badly off the toe and on his mallet and caused gear effect. And because that weight is so far back, it can actually, when you miss hit, you have to adjust for the fact that you create a little bit of side spin. And if that putt's over 10 feet long, that side spin, on a toe shot will go to the left and on a heel shot will go to the right. Something a lot of people don't know, but you do need to factor that in. And, I recommend with mallets, when you're on the putting green, just kind of intentionally hitting them on the toe and the heel just to get a sense of how they perform so that, you know what that's going to be like and you can kind of, adjust your miss accordingly.
I was a long-time blade player, and I still prefer, if I can, to play a blade, and I have a couple new ones that I'm really excited to try out that have forgiveness built into them in a smaller shape. The newest one would be whatever, I can't remember the name of it, the PXG one. It looks like it's a heel-toe mallet with a plumber's neck. But, I mean, it's got a ton of weight in the heel and toe, so I'm like really curious to kind of give that a shot. But I've gone to a mallet, I've gone to a long putter, and I found that my putting has gotten in general better, especially on longer putts where you have to make a longer stroke. So I still think inside of 5 to 10 feet, you have to learn to read a putt, which is still like the most important thing. I almost think he's struggling just with as much with that as he is anything else. And the other thing too, which I'm shocked that we don't see more of this, because a lot of these guys, they get into this, and I'm not crapping on this like brand, but like I'm just saying it's like kind of like this what's happening. And like you have a guy like Jordan Spieth who has not changed his putter really at all. He's tried different things, but he's really kind of stuck with it. And he still has pretty much stuck with the same style and shape super stroke forever. And he kind of figured it out, right? But of all the things that they haven't changed, maybe they're just doing it because they're trying to eliminate variables. But like Scottie, last time I saw him at Pebble when he was working with putters, and I talked about it, wrote a piece on it, like every single one of those putters has the exact same grip on it. Like change a feel, change something there. Whether it be like a round, like you got a guy with the best hands in the world, get a round grip on there, just to feel the putter release, or do something different. Because I think there is like the idea of the paralysis by analysis. But from a quintic perspective, Kris, here's what I want to know. What is the difference when you get a player that is between a mallet and a blade? Like, do you see that like the quintic numbers really like tighten up, just like you'd see like a high MOI driver kind of reduce spin variance?
I mean, not necessarily. It's all relative to the player, right? I mean, going back to yourself, like I love the look of a blade. I love the feel of a blade. And inside of 10 feet, I'm really comfortable with a blade. But you get me much outside of 10, 12 feet, and it's just an absolute dumpster fire. And, I mean, you do have a lot more room to hide as far as ball striking and consistency goes with the MOI in a mallet. But as far as the player improvements or differences, there's so many different variables that we look at. I mean, we're looking at weight, we're looking at optics, we're looking at shape, we're looking at milling or insert type on the face, we're looking at grip, and we're looking at shaft. There's so many different variables that go into it. And I mean, you can get a lot of results just by changing the optic. You can get a lot of different results by changing the actual shape of a putter. I mean, if you're looking at just static shapes, square things have a tendency to be more left biased for a right-handed player. Round shapes have a tendency to be more right biased. And then you bring in offset and neck configurations, and it totally changes the release pattern. I mean, and facial awareness, and I mean, potentially even strike location on the face. Same thing can be said for grips. I mean, a round grip allows the player generally to want to release the head more. A square grip with a definitive edge and line on the top, makes the face want to, not release as much. So there's all kinds of different things that you can look at in putter fitting.
I can remember being super, super excited when Superstroke released like the 1x1, which was like the perfectly square putter grip. I remember seeing at the PGA show that year, they had the big, tall Superstroke guy in the costume walking around, which was very funny. And I I was like so pumped to like try this grip out when I finally like got a chance to try it out. I'm telling you, 6 holes into my round of golf, I like walked to the car and grabbed my other putter and was like, nope, this is not the grip for me. I was, it's like, it doesn't feel right.
We've all been there, RB.
I was like, screw this. I'm grabbing, and I use a lot most of the time. Like I'm using if I'm using a standard like normal length putter, I'm using some sort of smaller super stroke grip. But that square one, let me tell you, that was the worst. That was probably one of the worst experiments I'd ever had. And I know people who've gotten it and they love it. Like they grip differently, have like some sort of like different, whether it be a claw grip or whatever, right? Back, left hand low or whatever. But that, yeah, it's sometimes you just gotta. It's like the one thing. Sometimes you gotta like open a different door and find a new opportunity, as like whatever they say. I'm sure some motivational Instagram account probably written something like that. They just didn't mean it when it came to putters.
It's funny you mentioned that because I remember when Arccos came out with the very first set of sensors. I was so excited. You like jammed those. I mean, they were probably about an inch tall, and I put them all on the grips, and then that was the original stuff. Like you didn't really have much else. And I went out and I shot like 45 on the first 9 holes with these in there. I was so pissed, man. I'm like, God, dude, like it was just like visually my grip looked longer, like the entire club, and I was like, I can't get over this. So I ripped them out. I was like, I love these. They're cool. I like them, but I can't. Like, there's something about it that's just screwing with me. I pulled them out of my golf clubs and shot 34 on the back 9. It's just like, man, I think we've all been there. It's a product that we're excited about. Now, of course, Arccos has some really cool products where you don't even have the sensors in the butt ends of the grips anymore. So, anyway, but yeah, it happens from time to time. Before we wrap this one, I did want to say that Rory, being a realist here, he offers some tips to Scottie on, maybe trying a mallet, but he does finish with, so I'd love to see Scottie try a mallet, but selfishly for me, Scottie does everything else so well that he's giving the rest of us a chance. And I feel like everybody else on the PGA Tour probably feels the exact same way. So they probably hope Scottie continues on with the blade putter, but who knows? Maybe he figures it out with the blade. I'm of the belief that he should send everybody away and just work with the putter that he's got and figure it out. Sometimes you don't need to make changes. Was the 4-putt to win the Masters the ultimate like mind mess up? That's a good question. Think about that. I don't know. I mean, he was putting, I've thought about that more than once. Well. He made it on the PGA Tour with the same Super at one from Scottie Cameron. It's not like he's struggled with the putter. He's never been a great putter, but I think the big thing for him is I think he worries too much about like people's perception of his putting. I think he's like letting the outside noise, and this is just like one man's opinion. I think he's letting the outside noise get to him. I think if he were to just like say screw it, like I'm just gonna go into a silo and just work with this putter and try and figure it out. I'm not gonna worry about what anybody's saying. I'm gonna give the same canned response anytime somebody asks me about the putter and just try and figure it out. I think he'd get back there, but I think he's self-conscious about it, and I would be too. I think any golfer would be, especially if you're like right in the spotlight, which he is. It's tough. So, but I know that Rory and the rest of Scottie's colleagues are probably happy that he's struggling with the putter, because if he was just putting like average, he would probably be beating the field by like 4 or 5 shots every time he teed it up. Like Tiger. I truly believe, and we don't know because we haven't seen it, but I truly believe if he was an average putter, if he was just around, let's say like 0 for strokes gained putting, just 0, I think he would be winning by like 4 or 5 shots every time he teed it up. He's that good from tee to green.
So this doesn't bode well for like so from Riviera, they showed this graphic on Sunday, and it was tee to green. He was ranked second at plus 1.93. Around the green, he was ranked second at plus 1.77. And his putting out of 51 players, he was ranked 50th at minus 1.32. If he was, as to your point, if he was just average, that'd be more than an extra stroke per round of golf, which is
he would be
insane.
murdering the field. I think he would be like putting up Tiger numbers. I do. He'd be winning that much. I truly believe that because he's from tee to green. He's practically unbeatable. Anyway, all right. So before we get into RB's interview with AD, let's do a couple of fully equipped hotline questions for this week. As always, if you want to leave us a voicemail, the number is 602-935-4974. Again, that's 602-935-4974. Coach, I think you have a couple teed up for this week, so let it rip.
So
Kris is silent.
Well, no, I was thinking how to respond to that. I'm here. I'm on it. I got it.
I was thinking he's having audio issues again.
I thought it was a
Coach,
bit.
voice of God.
Jesus.
I did think it was a. I thought it was a bit too. Anyway,
I was coming off mute. I got a little background noise here. I was trying to be courteous.
Sounds like you're on a jet plane at times in this episode.
I don't know what's going on. I'm just ready to scrap everything and start over with all new tech. This is crap. Anyway, to answer his question, you can come with the mini driver. We can get some baseline numbers. We can do some testing. But with the length of that driver, we don't have a shaft matrix specifically to cater to the mini driver. So the way that it's kind of set up, it's obviously shorter than the standard length driver. And I say standard very loosely, being between 45 and 46 inches, and then longer than the standard 3-wood. Again, standard being loose term with 43 inches to 43 and a half inches. So the mini driver could be more similar to the bend profile of an actual driver. So, you may benefit from going in and doing some testing with a driver just to figure out what type of bend profile and type of shaft would work for you, and then build it to go into the mini driver. But there's not a specific way to test shafts in that mini driver head just because of the length issue. Now, if you want something that is a sledgehammer and take the mini driver head and put it on a standard driver length shaft, then we could go nuts with that. But as far as being able to test what we would build at the length that the mini driver is built and sold at, we don't have anything in the studio to do an apples to apples comparison with what you have bought off the rack, unfortunately. It's just one of those niche clubs, kind of like the Callaway UW. It's a great golf club. Ton of people use them. A lot of benefit to be had there in performance. But it's just niche in its construction, and we don't have the resources to have a matrix specifically dedicated to that type of golf club.
All right. Well, there you go. There's your answer. And I'm sure that people out there that were wondering about mini drivers, hopefully that helps you out as well. All right, Coach, number 2. That's a really great question.
It's Tiger by a mile, guys. When Tiger's first paycheck was like $200,000, by the time he was finishing, it had like 8 times that. So yeah, sure, a WGC was worth $2 million 10 years ago, but now you're only at not that we expect players to be winning $10 million a tournament, but a Genesis was worth 4, I think, or 3.5 or something like that, which is still nuts. But that's only double. Like the inflation, the Tiger inflation, I think is by far, because TV contracts went up, all of that stuff. At least that's my opinion. I think they used to do it all the time. They don't do it anymore. As long like me, we're talking years ago. But No Laying Up used to ask anytime they did a player interview, they'd ask, "How much do you think of your career earnings do you owe to Tiger Woods?" And most players would say probably about 70% of it, because he goes, "What would you pay Tiger tax?" That was the question basically, and I was like, "Yeah, you guys owe a lot of freaking money to Tiger Woods. Everyone does, more so than anyone else, in my opinion." Again, that's my opinion.
Oh man, I mean, okay, I'll let Gene and Serial Killer go before I give my answer.
Go ahead, Gene.
Well, I was just going to say, hands down Tiger, because, the game in his professional career has changed so dramatically. It was, and I'm dating myself a little bit here, but, golf used to only be shown on weekends. You couldn't see golf on Thursday and Friday, and now you get pre-golf content, media content, like the NFL. I mean, it's all consuming. So Tiger, hands down. But I think the caller has a really interesting point, is that Live Golf has proven, and I hate to say this because I do believe he's the GOAT, but, and I think Riv was a classic example. We're in the post-Tiger era of golf. His era is over, and we're in this new modern era that still has to be shaken out. But the Saudis obviously believed that this has enough worldwide potential to throw a boatload of money at it. So this next effect, while it's not Tiger-esque as far as, the sheer scale, it's pretty massive. But I also would have to say it was built on the shoulders of Tiger Woods, without a doubt.
Yeah. Serial Killer, what do we think?
I'm in agreement. I mean, it's Tiger, and he changed essentially everything with golf. I mean, look at just the players in general. I mean, the athleticism, the physique of the players. You went from a John Daly to now you have this person that looks like an athlete coming out and just dominating. And to no surprise, the up-and-comers that followed him were, emulating what it is that Tiger was doing. With an entire team of people behind him, from coach to nutritionalist to personal training, and the physique changed, the game changed, and that's the Tiger effect for sure. So not only the income level, but the talent level and the depth of the talent pool, I say, is all a direct relationship to the Tiger influence. He brought it into the mainstream, like Gene was saying, and he made golf cool. He did stuff that nobody else had ever done before, and brought an entire new viewership and audience to golf. And they went, wow, look at this guy. This is something different and exciting. And it got people talking about it. And yeah, like we said, just brought a ton more money through sponsorship dollars.
Yeah.
I get to Chris's point, I get to use one of my favorite lines in golf. I think it's been attributed to Lee Trevino, and this just sums up golf pre-Tiger and the country club, mentality. Is Trevino said, it's been a long night when you wake up and there's still ice in your glass. And that pretty much sums up these guys. They'd get behind the gates. A lot of the time, I mean, this is going back a little earlier than Tiger, but a lot of the time, when I was a kid, the only golf that was shown was the back nine on Saturday and Sunday. They didn't even show the full, 18. So, he had a revolutionary effect as far as the interest in the game and the sheer attention to golf. And I think what made Tiger unique is Michael Jordan increased viewership in the NBA, but he didn't increase basketball sales, or he didn't increase, people buying outdoor courts. What was interesting about Tiger was Tiger moved the needle in getting people to play the game, not only viewing the game, but getting people to play the game. And that's what was really revolutionary about him vis-a-vis Jordan. Jordan created viewership in the NBA and brought it to a new level. Tiger created viewership, but he also created participation. And for that, I think all of us on this pod should be thankful for, is that he helped elevate the game and interest in the game all the way around.
Yeah. It is really difficult to not say Tiger Woods, because if you look at what LIV has done, yes, you could say that they did something that we've never seen in golf, which is guaranteed money up front, and a lot of it. But if you look at the guaranteed money, it's only going to a select group of golfers. Whereas Tiger Woods, everybody on the PGA Tour benefited from Tiger. And I think that is the difference, is that Tiger Woods was mainstream, and he helped the golf industry, a sagging golf industry at that. He helped the PGA Tour. He helped all of those television deals. I mean, how much money did Tiger Woods bring to all those TV deals whenever the PGA Tour was re-upping with the major networks? It's impossible to quantify what Tiger did for the game. Whereas it does feel like LIV is pretty much just like throwing money around. And it does, what just happened on the PGA Tour with private equity money coming in, what is that, like a $3 billion? Yes, right?
Yeah, it was like 1.5 and then one. Yeah, it was in a $3 billion based on like a $12 billion evaluation or something.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of money, but that doesn't. It just, I feel like in the professional game right now, we're getting to a point where we have sort of and I hate saying this because owning a PGA Tour card is a really big deal, but it's sort of the haves and the have-nots. We're seeing it in the signature events. Fewer guys are getting in. And those guys are having to go and play the other tour events. We're now seeing sponsors pulling out of title sponsors pulling out of tour events. I think about Charlotte with Wells Fargo last year. That so there's a lot of money that's being thrown around, but it's being thrown around to a very select group of players, and I think that's going to continue again. Whereas Tiger benefited all. So yeah, I would say it's Tiger, but a great question, and it's certainly not just it's Tiger. I think some people would say LIV, but I don't really think there's a wrong answer there. That'll do it for episode 229 of Fully Equipped. As always, if you want the gear goodness, check us out on our social channels. We are at Fully_Equipped on Twitter and at Fully Equipped Golf on Instagram and the YouTube channel. Thanks as always for listening. We'll see you next time.